Salvete Legionarii, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well, because today I want to do something a little different than usual. It's not really science, but debunking, and by that I mean I want to talk a little bit about Michael Jackson, because surrounding his persona and public image are till this day many conspiracy theories that are based on nothing. But after looking deeper into Michael Jackson after his death, many of those theories have been debunked, but people don't want to talk about much anymore. And since I saw some plastic surgeons talking about Michael Jackson and debunking some things about his nose and skin, I thought that might be a good video, because I didn't know of many of this, and I think it's important to talk about this. So jumping right into it, we start off with the most absurd conspiracy theory and the easiest to debunk. Yes, there are apparently many people still thinking Michael Jackson is alive. What sparked this conspiracy theory once again was because of an Michael Jackson impersonator called Michael Jackson, and not Jackson. He does a very good job impersonating Michael, but he isn't him. He has very different facial features. He can dance well, but not as good as Michael. Let's be honest here. Sadly, Michael Jackson died on August 25th, 2009. And there's no doubt about it. And there has been done many articles about it. There was a big investigation, an autopsy, and there's just nothing that suggests that Michael is still alive, living, I don't know, in someone's basement or anything. And I think this conspiracy theory is very disrespectful to Michael's family, his children, his nieces and nephews. It's just not a nice thing probably for the family members to hear people always talk about that he's still alive and he's out there somewhere. It must be very hurtful. This conspiracy theory, or more like a misconception, I think, is about the change of his skin color. The change is very obvious if you look at old clips of him as a child or even as a young adult. He is obviously a person of color, but later in his adult life, he seemed more Caucasian. Many people just brushed it off as, oh, he's just wanting to be white and he's white facing and all of these things. But the story is much deeper and sadder than him wanting to change his race. Michael suffered since, I think, his early puberty from a disease called vitiligo. And that is an autoimmune disease where your immune system destroys the pigments in your cells, the melanin. There are many pictures of Michael Jackson where he wears makeup and you can see some spots that are much lighter than his original skin tone. As he got older, the spots grew, and there were many pictures of him on stage where he was sweating and you could see streaks of this makeup flowing down his body and revealing some additional white spots. Also, there are many other symptoms of this disease, but I will only focus on because that is what is important in this discussion. But it is a serious autoimmune disease that many people suffer from. Michael tried to hide those spots for quite a long time with, as I said, makeup, with clothes, hats, scarves on his face. He wore masks and umbrellas. These are all things everyone, I think, has seen pictures of Michael wearing one or multiple of those. And that is where the iconic gloves come into play, because he had the spots on his hands for many years and they become more apparent because the pattern the body destroys the pigmentation is very obvious, especially in people of color. And back in the 70s or 80s, there was virtually no treatment for vitiligo, and there hardly is today more than back then. But there were and are some creams, they're called Benoquin, and they're often used to depigment the skin. It is especially used for people of color that have vitiligo. The cream is a topical treatment, and it depigments the skin by increasing the excretion of the melanin out of the melanocytes, which is basically the same mechanism vitiligo works, and it's just used to even out the skin tone. During the treatment with Benoquin, the patients have to protect themselves so strictly from the sun, because the sun reduces the excretion of the melanin out of the cells. So it is very important to just avoid exposure to the sun as much as possible, which is indicated in Michael Jackson, since he always wore umbrellas and scarves and hats and all of these things, which is possible that he used one of these. But even after the treatment, you should avoid exposure to the sun, because the melanin is what protects us from the sun. And since patients that used Benoquin don't have probably any melanin left in their body, they don't have any protection. So that is also an indicator that something like this might have happened. And it's not that he just wanted to be white or change his race or anything like that. He was sick and he wanted to even out the skin tone. In the midst of all of that, of all what he had to suffer through in this time, he got injured while a Pepsi commercial because his hair caught fire and his scalp was burned pretty severely, and that it was in 1984, and people assume that that might be the big start of additional plastic surgery. And what started obviously, Michael Jackson has had several rhinoplasties. The first one was in 1979, and his surgeon of choice was Dr. Stephen Hoflin. He did the first one and several others with repeated touch-ups, according to an interview with Washington Post. The first rhinoplasty was actually because of an injury he had during or after a rehearsal, and he couldn't breathe properly, so that was the first surgery he had. And after the incident with the Pepsi commercial in 1984, he actually probably in that year had another rhinoplasty. And you can pretty accurately see when he had his different rhinoplasties when you just compare his album covers or just pictures of paparazzis, because it's very obvious to see the changes. And I really think the plastic surgeon should have stopped him. Because as a plastic surgeon, I know you most of the times, or at least many times, have patients that come in because they want to have something changed because of cosmetic reasons. Of course, at a certain point, I think it is the responsibility of the surgeon to say, hi, this is enough. When we do more, you have risk A, B, Z. And that isn't what happened, because today many plastic surgeons, where I will link them by the way down in the description, I referenced many information of their videos in mine, but both of them think it is possible to assume that Michael Jackson had 10 or more rhinoplasties, and it is possible that in the end, he had a prosthetic on his nose. It is nothing confirmed, it is just a suspicion, because you could see in the last surgeries that his bridge was collapsed and just fallen in, basically, because the cartilage was gone. And on the tip of the nose, you could see some cavities and some just differences in the skin, which could be a necrosis, but there's no proof. It is just a suspicion and a possibility, so don't take it as a fact. Just before I go on with the video, I just wanted to say that it is possible that, or it is assumed that after the Pepsi incident and the multiple rhinoplasties, that Michael Jackson developed addiction to certain medications that led to his death in 2009. It is a sad thing. He was a very fragile person because of his upbringing, and I think many took advantage of him. That is at part something that I think as a connection to the allegation against him, but that is just my opinion and a suspicion and not at all based on any facts. So the allegations against Michael Jackson are a very popular topic till this day and sparks debate everywhere when you mention it, because there's no clear evidence on any side of the story, but especially because of you want to believe the victims, but also when there's not enough evidence, you don't want to destroy someone's life, and it's just a very heated topic. But according to Ziggy Jackson, he is Michael Jackson's nephew, the whole family was scrutinized in the 80s and 90s because of racism and probably some jealousy. Ziggy grew up in the Neverland Ranch, and he said the place was always open and welcoming for the whole family. He said there were always hundreds of people with Michael Jackson and the children in the Neverland Ranch, and all of them basically had some camera going, the parents, some other adults, there were reporters, and because it was more for the public. When children would stay there overnight, most of the time Michael wasn't even in the ranch. He also claimed that they had to deal with serious racism when they moved there. He was apparently called slurs and people wrote slurs on their property until they knew their last name, and then people would, oh, welcome Mr. Jackson, come on in. And he claimed there was a lot of hypocrisy and that the people, or many people in Santa Barbara, would have taken Michael down with every bit of information they had. And he claims that if there was any substance on those accusations, those people would have used it to destroy Michael. One of the people that had some allegations was Wade Robson. He was an ex-boyfriend of Michael Jackson's niece, and at some point he claimed Michael molested him with, till this day, no actual proof. He put out a statement and retracted it, and that happened multiple times. Claim, retracting, claim, retracting. Then he tried to write a book. After Michael's death, he tried to sue the estate. Everything got dismissed, and people assume since he was working for Michael, and after Michael's death, he had no money, no credentials, and he just tried to stay above everything. But again, it played into the whole image of Michael Jackson and the child abuse. There were many other adults that claimed that their children have been abused by him, but through all of the trials, no real evidence was brought to the table. Everything got dismissed. Till this day, the juries always stated there was not enough substantial evidence and that all the cases had been closed. Many of the boys that got claimed by their parents to have been abused by Michael have been without any contact to their parents for the last 11 years probably, and all of the children refused to partake in interviews in the last years, but only their parents partook in all of this and claimed that they haven't heard from their children before, which would fit into a theory to say that the parents wanted to gain some money, claimed that Mikhail abused their kids, and now that these kids are adults said, okay, I'm out, I don't want to have to do anything with it. It's just a theory that is not to invalidate the victims when they have been abused. I absolutely support them in all of that, but also there's no evidence of anything else in court. Everything got dismissed surrounding that, and what people have is hearsay. I can understand why people think Mikhail had been doing something to children, because let's be real, it is strange for superstar, the king of pop, to have slept with children in a bed or to have them at a sleepover at his house. But I think if you take his upbringing into account, it gets a lot more or a lot less confusing. All of his childhood, his father bullied him, called him ugly, and he hit all of the children pretty bad. He was a pretty bad father, and he was very abusive, and throughout the years Mikhail has confirmed all of this. And since he never had a real childhood, I think after his success he wanted to relive that. All of the people he had interviews with, or his friends, everyone speaks till this day so highly of him, but most of them say he had a very childlike personality. He was a very fragile person. He had very big insecurities just because his father and siblings picked on him for his looks and for his disease, and his father called him ugly and punished him and just forced them to perform their whole childhood. And he said he could relate to Peter Pan because he never wanted to grow up. Yeah, he wanted to live in his own world. That's why he built the Neverland Ranch. When you take this into account, you could see why he wanted to change his appearance. Beside the vertigo, he wanted to change his appearance. His eyes were bigger, something about his jawline changed, but he always said he had only rhinoplasties and nothing else. Debatable, but we don't know. It makes sense that he had those insecurities, and I think many people took advantage of him. I think also that if people want to believe in those allegations, they have the right to, because we just don't know. I personally don't think that those allegations are true, but as I said, we don't know. We weren't there. We probably will never know. His music career was extraordinary. When you think about that, you could listen to all of his music today and it's still a bop. It's still modern. It's so timeless, and I still have very much respect regarding his career and his persona, because he has done good regardless of some bad things that he might have done, but who knows. In my opinion, he was a child in an adult's body, a very talented adult. He tried to do good in the world and to change the world to something better, and many people took advantage of his insecurities and his lost childhood. I think the doctors in his life, at least most of them, were unethical and immoral, but there's nothing we can change. We just can assume, and I hope you learned something new about it, because I did. I think he still is a very interesting person to learn stuff about, and yeah, I hope you did like this video. If so, please leave a like and a subscribe and a comment down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!